Chapter 2 of Tractate Beitzah deals further with the laws of prohibitions and similar on holidays. The first Mishnah says, if a holiday falls out on a Friday, you can't cook on the holiday for Shabbos. You can cook for the holiday, and if it's leftovers, you can use those for Shabbos. There is, however, the concept of an Eruv Tavshilin, a rabbinic institution, which is essentially a food that has been prepared before the holiday and set aside for Shabbos, which is a representative action which allows us to complete food preparation on the holiday for Shabbos. Beitzah says it's required for that to be 2 cooked dishes, while Beitzah says it should be 1 cooked dish. They agree that fish cooked with egg is sufficient, as it's considered 2 cooked dishes. If this Eruv Tavshilin was eaten or lost before you finished making your food for Shabbos, it's no longer effective, and you can't cook on the holiday for Shabbos. If any of it is left intact, it still functions. The Gemara brings sources for this concept of an Eruv Tavshilin, and it has some opinions on the logic. Some say it's so that he'll properly portion his foods between the holiday and Shabbos. Others say it's to show that if you can't bake on a holiday for Shabbos, you for sure can't bake on a holiday for a weekday, as it's to preserve the holiness of the holidays. Sources for the opinions are debated at length. It also brings a side point source that your income for the year is set on the holiday of Rosh Hashanah. There are also some additional points on the importance and holiness of Shabbos, which are largely repetitions of things said in earlier tractates. In regards to the cooked dish used as an Eruv Tavshilin, some said it could not be bread, as it cannot be a common dish, or possibly because it must be something that accompanies a main dish, not a main dish itself, like bread. Pounded grain, for instance, meets both these requirements and is allowed to be used. Also, you can use the lentils at the bottom of a pot or fat scraped off a knife as long as the volume is over the size of an olive. It also says that small salted fish can be used even if they were cooked by a non-Jewish person. Fish hash, on the other hand, cooked with flour. The flour is the main ingredient, so in such a case it can't be eaten. The amount of an olive is required, and that is enough for no matter how many people. That's the minimum amount. There's no maximum amount. However, the Eruv Tavshilin does require knowledge of its establishment, although some say it's only required for the person establishing it. Everybody else included within it is fine, and the proximity of this inclusion is said to be the Shabbos Tichum, a concept from Tractate Eruvin, which basically just means a square area of 2,000 cubits around. There's a related incident listed. There's discussion if you can establish an Eruv Tichumin or Chatzeres, again, concepts from Tractate Eruvin, to expand the area you can walk in on Shabbos. If the establishment is on the holiday, that's the day before. After brief debate, we say you can't. There's also discussion on the proper formatting of the Amidah prayer, the Shemona Esrei, if a holiday falls out on a Shabbos. You can just open a standard prayer book to see the exact formatting that's decided on. If there's a 2-day holiday, which was something instituted, as we're not 100% certain which of 2 days a holiday is, so to be safe, we celebrate 2 days in a row, just so it's definitely covered. On both days, you can establish an Eruv Tichumin to expand your walking boundary on Shabbos, and an Eruv Tavshilin to allow yourself to cook on the holiday for Shabbos, so that way it's definitely established on one of the correct days, that's a weekday. An Eruv Tichumin is stricter, meaning if you allow the Eruv Tavshilin, you might not also allow the Eruv Tichumin, because acquiring a residence on a holiday is not really allowed. Further, in regards to a 2-day holiday, you cannot cook from one day of the holiday to the next, but it says that you can cook a whole oven full of meat when you only plan on using one piece for that day. It also allows similar concepts by other cooking, not just by baking. Others say you can fill your oven full of bread when you only just needed one piece, as bread bakes better when the oven is full, which is the opinion we hold like. There's a question: in the event you didn't make an Eruv Tavshilin, can others use your flour to bake for you, which has a practical difference if you need to transfer the ownership of your flour to others before they bake for you. We say you would have to do this, as your flour is prohibited. A further point: if somebody doesn't make an Eruv Tavshilin and bakes for Shabbos anyways, that wasn't allowed. But can they eat that food? It's argued. We try to bring a number of proofs, but it goes unresolved. We also say we hold like our base Hillel that you only need 1 cooked dish. It is worth noting that many nowadays use 2 cooked dishes when doing this practice, just to be safe. If your Eruv Tavshilin is eaten while you're in the middle of preparing dough for Shabbos on the holiday, you can finish the baking. New Mishnah: if the holiday fell out on the Shabbos, Beitzah says that any necessary immersions, whether for people or utensils, must be done before. Beitzah says that utensils must be immersed before Shabbos, but a person can immerse himself on Shabbos. They do agree that you can make impure waters purified in a stone utensil lowered into a mikveh, but you should not immerse the water, which we'll explain to mean not doing this in a wooden utensil. We may also immerse utensils from purpose to purpose and from group to group, which will be explained. The Gemara says an opinion that the ban on immersing utensils on Shabbos is a preventative measure so people don't accidentally carry the utensils in a public domain on Shabbos. Then, a cistern in your own courtyard still wouldn't be allowed, as that could lead people to start using a public cistern, and the concern of immersing utensils on a holiday where you're allowed to carry in a public domain is that it could lead you to carry on Shabbos also, where it's impermissible. This is all, however, argued on, and others give the explanation that you can't immerse utensils on Shabbos out of concern that you'll wring them out, which would apply to fabric utensils, and also non-fabric ones out of concern of the two being confused. It's debated further. A third opinion is that people might start pushing off immersing their utensils, delaying them until the holiday, and then they could become impure, which we bring a source for. Another explanation, it's not allowed as it's similar to the principle of making a utensil usable, which is not allowed on a holiday. A person can immerse himself, as that doesn't resemble repairing yourself from impurity, it just looks like you're cooling yourself off, which could apply in any water. There are some related discussions, and a point on sipping vinegar through your teeth, which is a repetition of a point from Tractate Shabbos. The point on immersing impure water in a stone utensil, which is allowed, or a wooden utensil, which is not, are discussed. It also says you shouldn't immerse a utensil by twilight before a holiday, as it also needs a night after for it to become purified, and twilight is questionably between day and night. Some also disallow it by twilight on a weekday, others say it's fine, as he's rushing to do it then before the deadline, meaning he knows the laws of the necessary timings. And the other opinion says it's not allowed because he could be rushing as he has work right after, so he actually doesn't properly know the laws. This is discussed. It says you can immerse from purpose to purpose on a holiday, which means something that was immersed for a purpose, like a wine press, and then immersing it before using it for a different purpose, like for an olive press. It also says you can immerse from group to group. If you were planning on eating your Paschal sacrifice with one group of people and then decided to eat it with others, you can re-immerse your utensils on a holiday in between if you want to. New Mishnah. Beitzah says you can bring the Shalomim offering in the temple on a holiday, but you can't lean on them, which was a step of the process for certain offerings. You cannot bring Olah offerings, but Beitzah says you can, and you can also lean on both of these. The Gemara says that the debate on leaning is based on a verse which includes the sacrifices in regards to holidays, unlike vowed and donated offerings which cannot be brought on a holiday. There's disagreement on this. There's further debate in regards to which offerings are, can, and cannot be brought on holidays. This is debated further between many opinions. It also gets into some points on the fixed times for certain sacrifices and disagreement and other opinions in regards to the allowance of offering vowed or donated sacrifices on holidays. Sources are brought to debate if they are or are not permitted. It also has debate if you can prepare for eating on a holiday an animal which is owned partially by a Jewish person and partially by a non-Jewish person. Some say yes by an animal to slaughter it, as you can't really slaughter half of it, but by a dough offering you can just separate your portion. If part of the dough will also be given to animals, like dogs, you can eat the whole thing if you have a carcass, which you can feed to the dogs instead. It also says, if the government requires its citizens to bake them bread for the soldiers, you can bake it on a holiday if you'd be allowed to share some of the bread with your child, and each loaf is suitable for that, it'd be permissible. Otherwise not. There's a related incident brought. There's also discussion if date pits are muktzah, which we eventually say that they are, but you can feed them to animals by putting them on bread. Some say you can put them on bread to be able to do anything with them. In regards to having non-Jewish people eat with you, it says it's allowed on Shabbos, but on a holiday there's a concern that you might end up cooking more food. Some say there's an issue with even inviting them to eat for Shabbos, as the dregs of wine at the bottom of their cup would be muktzah and can't be moved. In the end, we do allow us to invite a non-Jewish person to eat with us on Shabbos, with no concerns of muktzah or otherwise, but there is a stringency by holidays, as it could result in you cooking additional food on the holiday, which, as we said, is problematic. What you could do, and what some sages did when they invited non-Jewish people to their holiday meals, was to clarify beforehand that this was all the food and they weren't making any more. New Mishnah. Beitzah says you can't heat water on a holiday to wash yourself unless the water is fit for drinking. Beitzah allows it. You can make a bonfire to warm yourself. The Gemara clarifies that the only person who allows the bonfire is Beitzah. New Mishnah. There were 3 times that the sage Rabban Gamliel ruled strictly like Beitzah, by not insulating hot water on a holiday, no straightening a candlestick on a holiday, and no baking thick loaves of bread on a holiday, only wafers. Others said that the last one, by bread, was a stringency just his household kept, everybody else can make thick bread. The Gemara debates if the issue of insulation is where he established an Eruv Tavshilin, Some say no, and others say an amount is allowed, the bare minimum necessary for his sustenance. Some say the issue of food installation on the holiday is that it's clearly being done for Shabbos. Others disagree and say the case discussed is where he made an Eruv for cooking, but not for insulating. The issue of straining a candlestick is where it's a candlestick made of parts, so assembling them looks like the forbidden practice of building on holidays and Shabbos. The debate is if building applies to utensils or not. There are similar points, such as some say you're allowed to trim a wick on a holiday and similar. You can extinguish a fire on a holiday to save lives, but there's debate if you can do it to stop financial loss, and similar points discussed also on the permissibility of eye medication on a holiday. As for the point on the permissibility of baking thick bread, it gives dimensions as to what makes a bread considered thick, and the issue is that Beis Shammai held you're expending unnecessary effort, and his opinion would apply by all holidays. New Mishnah, Rabban Gamliel ruled leniently about 3 things. You can sweep your dining room, you can put incense on coals on holidays, and on the holiday of Passover, you can roast the whole Paschal offering, a kid, along with his entrails. The rabbis prohibited these 3. The Gemara says that everybody agrees that using incense for fragrance of a room is allowed. The debate is by perfuming a garment. Others disagree. There's also debate about smoking fruits on holidays or spices on coals and similar. Additional points are discussed along with the allowance of the Paschal sacrifice. New Mishnah. The sage Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah allowed 3 things which the rabbis prohibited. He allowed his cow to go out in public with a strap on its horns, he would comb his animals with a metal comb, and he would grind peppercorns with a grinder. Some didn't allow the metal comb, as it could make a wound, but allowed a wooden comb. The rabbis allowed neither. The Gemara explains that it wasn't actually this sage's cow, it was his neighbor's, but since he didn't protest against the actions with it, it was considered to be his. The act of cow combing is described and the debate as to which tools can be used. New Mishnah. A pepper grinder can contract impurity as a receptacle vessel, a metal utensil, or a sieve. The Gemara says the bottom is a receptacle, the middle is a sieve, and the top is an upper utensil. New Mishnah. A child's toy wagon is susceptible to a type of impurity called midras tumah. It can be moved on Shabbos, but only over clothing, not on a dirt floor. Also, no utensils can be dragged on the ground, as they'll plow furrows in the ground, which is the malacha work of plowing. Besides for wagons, which don't make furrows, they just press down. The Gemara explains the points on impurity, because the child leans on the wagon, and the wagon can be moved, because it's considered like a utensil, so it isn't muktzah, and there's disagreement about the issue of plowing and making furrows, as it's unintended by a wagon. And that's the end of chapter 2.